Welcome to the Coach Trap podcast with your hosts Greg Stein and Dan Williams. This is where we break down all those marketing myths, tell it like it is, and drop a few hacks to help you go from invisible to irresistible. No fluff, just honest truths and maybe some sarcasm along the way. Let's dive in.
Dan, we are back for our latest episode of the Coach Trap podcast. So today, we're talking about content systems and how to never run out of ideas. This is definitely your area of expertise. And I think that with all the coaches that we mentor, I think one of the biggest issues they have is scheduling content, coming up with content, being consistent with their image. I think the best way to start is Dan, how did you create all of those X tweets? Where did you start? Any tips? How did you schedule it?
Yeah, I think this is a massive issue that people have, especially coaches who are obviously busy with clients all the time. So I think scheduling is definitely a big thing. I personally don't do it because I don't have a life. But if you do have a life, I would say scheduling is something you should be doing. So what I used to do back in the day when I had a life was on Sundays, I would always just come up with ideas, and usually in the morning, because that's kind of when your brain is, or when my brain is the most creative. Just think about what your audience, what kind of problems they have. Talk to people definitely as well, that throughout the week. Put ideas in your drafts to be improved on the Sunday or on every day you create content. And I think it's just about being efficient with it. Batch creation is definitely massive.
Absolutely. Dan, I think obviously one of the biggest questions as well we get when we mentor other coaches is how much should they post? When should they post? And almost like what should they post? I know, the mere exposure effect quite well. I remember studying it. The more people see you, the more they trust you. Regular posting increases credibility, for example. But is there like a golden number? Is there an amount that you should look to post a week, or is it just post when you are?
It really depends on the platform. I'd say Instagram, you'd be looking at one post a day would be optimal. LinkedIn, maybe one post a day, one post every other day. Twitter, 2 to 4 posts a day, if possible. But obviously, there is too much you can do. Because I used to post on Twitter like 10 times a day, and it was ridiculous. I was posting every single hour, and I was getting about 8 views on each post. But you've got to start somewhere. But I would say for coaches who are busy and who have got lives, 3 times a day on Twitter, 1 time a day on LinkedIn, once on Instagram. And obviously you can, we do podcasts once a week, and that turns into 20 Instagram reels as well. So it's just being efficient with your time.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think that's a good time to move on to the next question as well, because obviously one of the things I've noticed with content massively is when all coaches start off, they start off with the same generic system on Canva, posting mountings, quotes, stats, whatever it might do. And then you realize that you're just like everyone else. Why the reels are so good is because we've realized that they can generate 200% more views. They can have a lot more interaction with them. But is there a tried and tested method, Dan? The amount of videos that you should maybe post a week, or should you mix it up, or should you just post videos? We've tried and tested this, haven't we, across multiple platforms. But what's your approach and what do you recommend?
Videos have been good for us, especially if you're coaching something visual, like something like fitness. You can see transformations, stuff like that. You should be posting more videos. But for us, we can also get value through videos. But we're not going all in. Obviously, the writing is the main thing for us to get the most value across. But I think,
I think
yeah, go on.
no, I think that's a really good point. Obviously, with the coach trap, we've almost taken over or taken control of slightly different aspects. And I took the Instagram and the TikTok. And it was really interesting. Actually, if you just post a picture on Instagram, the views can be minimal. But if you post a reel and you post it at the right time, it's not just a little bit more effective, it's massively more effective. And then I realized actually on TikTok, that can even triple more than what it does on Instagram. So the more I see those stats, the more I think that video is the most effective. But is it all about numbers, or does it just need to resonate with a certain few? What's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, that's it. If your audience are going to watch it, it's brilliant. But even if your video is the most valuable video out there, if your audience doesn't like video or they can't be asked watching a 10-minute video, if you're making YouTube, you're not going to get clients from it, even if you get the views from it. So I think definitely position yourself where your audience is. And the most important thing is, if you want to know what your audience wants to know, ask them, DM them, listen to their comments, even like hop on calls with them if you can, if you've got time, and just see what they want to know. And then you can give it to them, and that you're going to attract more people like that. So you can kind of compound your business and compound your views over time.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dan. I think another thing I'd like to add to that is we mentored one guy, didn't we, in particular, and we were giving him a schedule or telling him the amount that he should post and what he should post, but also we told him there has to be an element of trial and error, almost posting a certain type of video, slightly different format, slightly different subject, and to see what one resonates with your audience. Because actually, I think that your voice, your look, your image, your niche, for example, it's different for everyone, and it obviously resonates with a certain type of person. That comes from experimenting, trying out different things. But also what I see on Instagram a lot is people posting pretty much the same video every time, same hook, same CTA, same main body, but maybe just different clothes. And that's obviously just because it works and it has maximum impact. But for coaches, that won't really work, Dan, will it? Posting the same thing every time just because it has a lot of views. So, what would be your breakdown for a video? What would be your main tips for putting something out?
I would say if you're already doing writing, just kind of say that and add your personality to it if you can.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for video and getting viral on Instagram or getting the views from the people you want is saying upfront in the first kind of 2 seconds who this video is for and what you're going to do. That upfront hook is massively important, especially when you're new, because people don't trust you yet. So they've got to know that you're that guy for them who's going to solve their problem, and you're about to drop some value in there, and then they kind of get into the audience, they follow you, and you can go from there.
That's a really good answer. I think that leans in, doesn't it, to that trial and error, seeing what works for you and then honing in a real specific technique. I remember with reels in particular and video content that you've got maybe 40 milliseconds to make an impact, 1 to 2 seconds to have someone make a decision. And in that 1 to 2 seconds, they decide whether they watch it all the way through or they skim and move over it. And interestingly, I know a study was released that 80% of everything that people see on Instagram, X, LinkedIn, they will forget within an hour. So that's 80% of content that they will just skim over, every single person. So how do you make yourself the 20%? It's really interesting, isn't it, Dan? That stat is so similar to the amount of coaches that quit or fail every year. Literally exactly the same. So it's all about standing out. How would you do it? What do you recommend? How would you become that 20% that makes sure that your content isn't skim, or read over, but also the 10% who succeed at coaching?
Yeah, with video, even with tweets, to be fair, your hook is massively important, especially if you're new. You've got to tell people that you're going to solve their problem, and then you've got to deliver on what you say as well. It's not just about kind of clickbaiting people, but you've got to deliver. You've got to kind of give them advice and position yourself as someone who's knowledgeable about that thing. I think something people miss out on is storytelling quite a lot. Um, Obviously, if you've got stories, if you've got experience, share that, because it's only gonna help you. Also, I think CTAs are quite underrated. People don't like to ask for things, but if you've given enough value, if you've given 10 times the amount of value, and then you ask in the last 3 seconds, oh yeah, you can follow for more of this, or you can DM me for kind of specific advice for you, that definitely goes a long way, and it will help massively in growing your audience.
Absolutely. I think also with the CTA, you can include stuff like authority bias, like when you see Nike, just do it, for example. Ours is don't fall into the coach trap. And I say it on every single caption, every single video, etc., over and over again, trying to build authority bias. That's the CTA that I use. Do you recommend something like that, Dan? You try and make something catchy that sticks in the head, or do you make it more to the point, more specific? I think me and you have basically trialed different things, haven't we? You're going for something a little bit more authentic. I'm trying to go straight down that authority bias route. But what do you recommend if you're a new coach with your CTA? Any tips, any hints, anything that works? What's your thoughts?
I think it's getting that balance between saying the same thing so they kind of associate your brand with that thing, like us with the coach trap, and also not getting banner blind. So if they read it so many times and they see the same thing, the same format, the same visuals every time, they're going to get bored of it. They're not going to start seeing it. Like, I know there's a lot of studies about banner blindness on Facebook ads, which is where people see, that the word ad underneath the post and they literally just scroll past it like unconsciously. So it's quite interesting. Getting that balance. I think definitely have a CCA, say the same similar things, but with different visuals, different words, different ways to relate it to your post. That's kind of the optimal thing you can do there.
Yeah, good answer, Dan. When we mentor coaches, one of the biggest questions I get asked is scheduling content. They might say, Greg, how are you so organized with your content? And I say, well, typically I plan up to 2 months in advance of what I'm going to create. Some people might say that loses authenticity, but for me, that's all about burnout, overwhelm. I want to get it right, but also I don't want it to ruin my life or take over my life, because we've seen coaches, haven't we, Dan, that can take 3 4 hours a day making content. I will never be that guy, because coaching has to be the number one aspect of my business, the actual coaching, not the social media creation. So I plan for 2 months in advance of what I'm doing, and I do schedule content, but I do try and mix it up. I do try and write authentically. Dan, would you use apps like Buffer um, to schedule your content, or are you someone who just sort of does it off the cuff if and when?
I know we always say practice what we preach, but I don't schedule content. I would always recommend you do, especially if you've kind of got clients you're established. You haven't really got time.
Yeah,
Batch creation is massive. You can kind of make a full week of content for four platforms, a post a day in like one to
yeah,
2 hours, one day a week. So I think, yeah, that's definitely an important thing. I don't schedule content because my kind of thing is that I'm authentic, which is probably why you listen to this at the end of the day. But coaches, everyone knows that coaches are coaches. They're not marketers, so they can't be spending all their time on marketing. As long as you're getting that value across in the time that you spend on it, um, you should be good to schedule. I think 2 months ahead is quite a lot. Um, I'd say a couple of weeks, just a buffer if you get ill or something. Like I was tweeting in hospital last year because I hadn't scheduled anything, so I was just on the hospital bed tweeting. But ideally, I would have
wow.
had a buffer. So that's quite an interesting story there.
Well, Dan, that is dedication. I think for me, even I was working on Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, etc., etc. But that's all part of my routine. And obviously, knowing Dan, we're in this. We've not just done it for months, but we've done it for years. It's tried and tested, and you have to be consistent. Consistency is the key. So yes, I do schedule up to 2 months in advance. I don't use stuff like Buffer, because actually on most of the apps themselves, you can schedule. On Instagram, you can schedule up to a month in advance, and you can schedule up to 15 posts at a time. On LinkedIn, you can go up to 2 months in advance, for etc. On X, you can't schedule though, Dan, can you? Or can you schedule on X?
You can schedule an X. I think X is a difficult one because the thing that makes X different is it's not corporate and it's all personality. I think X you shouldn't really be scheduling. You should be posting from your drafts as much as you can. I definitely, when I get an idea, I just stick it in the draft. It's really easy. And then if you are stuck for ideas, which happens, even for like a week, 10 days, sometimes I just have no ideas. I just go into the draft, post whatever I was thinking, like the last week. And that's kind of my balance level where I have a buffer, but I also can post if I want to, whatever I want.
It's a good answer, Dan. I think a really good point to talk about next is newsletters. One of the people that we mentor asked me about how do I write newsletters? How do I schedule them? What is the process? And I said, I write newsletters based on my life. I have to have the inspiration. I can't just sit there and write a newsletter out of thin air. I need to have that light bulb moment every day, every other day. I make a note of it on my phone, and then I sit down and I go for it. The best inspiration that I get for writing newsletters is with interacting with other coaches, other marketers, especially on X. Do you remember, Dan, the guy recently who was talking to me about offers? It was great inspiration for me. I used that, turned it into a newsletter, and of course, scheduled it up to 2 months in advance, like I do some of my others. But Dan, do you do the same for newsletters? Do you have any techniques for that, or are you someone who just tries to write it if and when you have that light bulb moment?
At the moment, I know we're writing a lot of coach trap newsletters, so I'm getting up at like early in the morning, 6 o'clock, just getting out of bed and writing the newsletter straight away because that's what I found works for me the best. With a long form content, just getting it out and not having any distractions right early in the morning. I think if you're spending more than an hour, I know we told our client don't spend more than an hour on it. If you get to an hour, just stop. I think you spent way too much time on that. You should be writing 500 to maybe 1,000 words max. It normally takes me about half an hour, but obviously
Yeah,
with experience you'll get quicker. But newsletters are the biggest kind of leverage thing you can do because you can get out of one newsletter you can get 5 LinkedIn posts, 15 tweets. You can make a video, 2 videos, some Instagram reels from those videos. Like it's just a massive idea with massive potential for extra distribution. So it's quite efficient.
absolutely. One thing that I have massively is the cringe factor. And it's something that I talk about, Dan, with the people that we mentor. I absolutely hate pictures of myself making videos, writing content. I have that cringe factor almost where I doubt myself. I have imposter syndrome. The list goes on. But I know that if I don't put the content out, if I don't market myself, then I can't do a job that I love. I can't have the clients that I work with every day. So I do have a tip. I write the content, I read it once, and then I never look at it again. I find that if I look at it 2 times, 3 times over, I don't post it or I don't schedule it. I have too much of that cringe factor. Dan, do you have anything similar, or is there any other methods that you use like that? You talked about getting up early, but is there anything else that gives you that light bulb moment, or anything that oversees or overcomes the mental blocks that can come with posting content?
Yeah, I think videos especially people are scared to do. I know a lot of like good marketers who just don't want to do videos because they kind of feel like they're not good on camera. I was one of them until a couple of months ago. But I know you talked about like type A and type B people who are obviously you know more about this than me, but I think it's just you've got to do it. And if you're going to reach the audience that you want to reach with it, just do it. You're obviously going to get better with time. I definitely found
Yeah.
that with these podcasts. I'm definitely getting much better, and hopefully the listeners are agreeing with that. But yeah, what do you think about that?
So that is a really good point, Dan. Just to recap, type A and type B. Type A are the Wolf of Wall Street types. They are the marketers. They are the people that are just after money, earning that hard cash, if you like. Whereas the type Bs are the nicest people on the planet. They're the coaches, or as I like to call them, the lollipop ladies, the people that are willing to give their time for free, the people that want to help. But we know to be a good coach, you have to come somewhere in the middle. We know that if you're the far end of each of those spectrums, if you're too much type A or too much type B, there's no longevity. You might get some short wins, but you're not going to last in the game. So you have to be both. I think that the biggest time that I noticed this, and you have to be both, is comments. Comments on reels, comments in posts. I would love to know what you think, Dan, about how you react to comments. But just before I hand it over to you, for me, I read them over. If I can speak to them, if I can build up a bond, if I see them as a potential client or someone I can work with, I interact with them. But, there is always a but. There are some that want to ridicule or want to laugh at you or aren't interested but comment anyway. I just simply ignore it. And that is the best advice that I can give to anyone. You are going to get haters. You are going to get people that are going to ridicule, that are going to comment, but you have to take it. You have to take it. And actually, more than that, I see it as a positive thing because I only need to resonate with 10%, 20% of people that see my posts. I don't need everyone to like it. Dan, I know you've said something similar to that in the past. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've got to remember that the hateful comments, they're not coming from people who are better than you. They're coming from people who are either jealous or they haven't got time. They've got too much time on their hands, if you know what I mean. Like people who are doing better than you are either going to ignore you or they're going to support you. And you've got to remember that at the end of the day. I think ignoring is like the best option.
Yeah,
If they've got a point, definitely engage with them, kind of rectify their view of you. But if they're obviously just being hateful, ignoring is your best option.
absolutely, Dan. That's a great answer. So, look, I'll be honest, whenever you post, there is always that chance that you're going to be ridiculed or laughed at or questioned or doubted. And I've seen that a lot and I've had that a lot myself. If you're a coach and you are marketing yourself, it is going to happen. It's not an if or a when, it is going to happen. And you have to be ready for it. And the best advice that I can give you is just ignore it. Or, like Dan said, maybe speak to them, maybe try and reason with them. Don't waste your time with them. That's important. But the DMs, I use that as a real important opportunity for me to get to know people, to build up relationships, to build up bonds. Dan, how much time a day do you think you spend on content creation, on DMs? You don't want this to overwhelm you. So, as a guy who's been doing this a few years and you've got lots of experience, how much do you spend?
I think people are shocked when they realize, like, for me personally, as a personal branding guy, I spend maybe like 20, 30 minutes on comments a day, maybe
Yeah,
10 on DMs, and the rest is just for my clients, which is what you should be doing as a coach as well. Like, the most important thing is your clients. Content creation, obviously, the emails are the highest leverage thing you can do, as we mentioned. You can make a lot of content from that in like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, like a full week's worth of tweets or LinkedIn posts and videos too. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is you've got to realize that it's going to take time to build the trust. Like you're not going to trust someone who's just come up on your feed, so you've got to be willing to spend that time and build that trust. And it is going to be worth it in the end. Like I know one of our clients was saying, if I did this for 6 months, would I be guaranteed like trust? And the answer is pretty much yes. Like at the start, it's going to be hard. Um, it took me probably 2 months to get my first 50 followers, but then after that, I was getting about 400 followers a month at one point.
yeah.
So it's just building that trust. Is a massive thing.
Dan, I absolutely agree with you. It's all about building trust. Another big question that I get asked, Dan, from these people that we mentor is how long does this take? How long does it take to create an audience, to acquire clients? And I said, well, there's no magic answer to that. Everyone's different. You openly, Dan said you signed a client after a few weeks with a few followers, but I have seen a lot about the 100 video rule. Don't expect anything unless you've posted 100 videos, 100 posts. That takes time. And we've had people, haven't we, Dan, that come in and they're new or they've been doing this for a few months and they go, look, we don't have the results. We're not building the traction. Well, you're not going to get anywhere in a month or maybe even 2 months. You have to be consistent. You've got to set goals, and then you've got to go after it. You have to see this as more than just earning money. You've got to try and build authority, and you've got to love doing it. That's my best advice that I can give to any new coaches out there. Dan, how long is there a golden number? Is there a certain amount of time it takes to build this sort of traction and authority, or is it different for everyone?
I'm a big believer in you're going to get the clients when you deserve them or when the best time to get them is. I think it's a nice story that I got clients at 30 followers, but I was actually really bad at that point, and I actually pissed a couple of people off because a couple of years ago because I just didn't know what I was doing. So maybe it would have been better if I'd spent more time failing and learning those lessons, and waited till like 500 followers to start getting clients. At the end of the day, you are going to reach people, and as long as your content is valuable to the right people and you're reaching out and you're doing all the right things that we're talking about, you are going to get clients eventually. You've just got to be patient is a massive thing, and they're going to come at the right time for you is my biggest tip.
Absolutely. Patience is the key. Consistency is an essential element to success as a coach. We signed someone down last week, and we've been speaking to them for 6 months, building up a relationship over 6 months. That's sometimes what it takes. Consistency, being authentic, being honest, and actually genuinely wanting to help people. But there is one thing that I know, one stat that is so clear to me in all of the ads that I've posted or all the times I've scheduled, is that people, before they buy, will want to see you at least 7 or 8 times, even across multiple platforms, newsletter, X, LinkedIn. Dan, is that something that you've seen before? Is there a magic number, a number that can lead into conversion rates? What have you seen on that?
Yeah, definitely. The last inbound I got, the client that we had was I actually talked to him after he's left as a client, and he said he'd seen me about 2 months before he actually reached out and said, "Can we book a meeting?" So that was very interesting to me. It was kind of proving our point that you've got to be consistent, and the people are going to trust you at just the right time. I think that's the biggest takeaway from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dan, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I think there's some real gems there. And for me, the real take homes is be consistent, set goals, stick to it, don't expect immediate results, and be prepared for a bit of trial and error. Experimenting, trying out different material is always going to be the key to success. Dan, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the Coach Trap, and I'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Greg.